If you're on the West Coast, good evening. If you're on the East Coast, happy late night. And if you're across the pond, brew a cup of Joe. It's been a late one for you. I'm Justin LaBar here on our wrestling podcast on Wednesday night, April 28th, being joined as I am now every single Wednesday from Forbes.com. He is the one, the only Alfred Konuwa. Alfred, what's going on tonight, man?
How's it going, man? I like that you said hello to everybody. That was very cordial of you.
Just trying to encompass the world here. You know, I mean, if you're in Australia, then tell me how Thursday's going. How's Thursday midday going? I guess
no spoilers, Australia.
No spoilers. Well, we won't give you any spoilers here. We'll just give you the rundown, the recap of what happened tonight on AEW Dynamite. It was a taped AEW Dynamite. You could certainly tell if you watch closely on the way they started and ended some segments, but that's fine. They were able to maximize the most of their minutes and probably film some extra stuff, as we'll note as we go through here. This, of course, Alfred, being a go-home show to a premium episode of Dynamite next week, which is going to be called Blood and Guts, of course, anchored by what's going to be essentially a War Games match that we'll get into here in a little bit. But something interesting to note is that we were under the impression, and Jim Ross had even said on commentary over recent weeks, that Blood and Guts would be a night of one match, and we presumed it would be this big battle between Pinnacle and Inner Circle. But tonight, they announced some other matches, so we'll have to kind of break down exactly what kind of format we're going to be seeing next Wednesday from Daily Center of Blood and Guts. But nonetheless, tonight certainly did a lot of business to sell you to next week. And so let's jump right into it. Of course, we encourage everybody to super chats. We'll get to everything. So if you want to keep your super chat for a particular topic when we get to it, that's going to keep it flowing the best. But we start out, it's going to be Hangman Page up against Brian Cage from Team Taz. But Alfred, just as Hangman Page trying to come out, he gets attacked by Cage and Team Taz on the ramp. Dark Order eventually tries to run some of Team Taz off, but even still, Cage hits a nasty powerbomb on the stage. This all happening before the bell has even sounded. Bell finally does ring, and Page is just getting an ass kicking for a while. It's a whole lot of heat here. Of course, Taz on the commentary. Ty finally turns. Page hits a big moonsault to the outside. But really, the finish is what is one of the most buzzworthy things coming out, the outcome coming out of this episode. Brian Cage hits a sequence of a power bombs, a buckle bomb, and then into his drill claw slam. And Brian Cage, Alfred, gets the win over Hangman Page. Upset, yay or nay?
Absolutely. I was shocked to see this. And just based on how they were booking this match and that Brian Cage was pretty much dominating a lot of it, I was just expecting Hangman Adam Page to spring the comeback and win just like he's been doing for weeks. And we've kind of touched on this, but, Hangman Adam Page has been promoted as a number one contender, but it does seem like it's too early for him to go to Kenny anytime soon. So you knew that somewhere along the line he was going to stumble. So I really like that they've been building this up for weeks on end. So when he does stumble, it's, to a guy like Page or to Cage, somebody who needs it. And I think this is a must-win match for Cage because we've also been talking about how much they've kind of put the Taz stable to the corner in terms of how they booked them. And so this was a lot of steam for him, much needed. But I was absolutely shocked. It's as clean as a finish as you're going to see in AEW, yet there was still outside interference. Before the match, you got powerbombed and whatnot. But, it was relatively clean. So good for Brian Cage.
Yeah, AEW clean. And you're right, because just a few, and I don't know if it was seconds or minutes, but not long before that finish, there was a sequence where Hangman went to go spring roll at the top rope to go for his buckshot lariat finish, and Cage had countered, and I believe Cage countered and then hit basically like a Brock Lesnar F5. 1, 2, Page kicks out, and I remember, and I said to myself at that moment, I said, here's a big freakish guy in Cage who's just been beaten up on Page, and he just hit a Brock Lesnar. And granted, it's not Cage's finish, but I just remember thinking to myself at that moment, if that couldn't even put Hangman Page away, they're just not going to allow this guy Brian Cage to go over. And then a moment later, I'm pleasantly surprised. And then even commentary noted after it, you have to wonder, could have Hangman survived had he not been powerbombed on that stage prior? So still trying to keep Hangman, who was ranked number 1 or whatever he is. But yeah, I mean, certainly, definitely needed. Had Brian Cage lost this, I mean, it just would have been one more. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
So good to see here.
Love to see this, and they worked very well together. I thought they had a lot of chemistry.
Absolutely. Up next, we are going to get a promo with the Young Bucks, with the Good Brothers, with Omega, with Don Callis. They're in a limousine. They're dressed ridiculously. Omega's talking about how he's not scared. Look in my eyes, I'm not scared. Money follows us, just talent and success, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they start to hear honking of a horn, giving them. They all start having like PTSD. They're freaking out. They're having flashbacks of last week, only to reveal that their bumbling limo driver Michael Nakazawa accidentally started hitting the horn. So just calling their bluff. So this, I mean, shenanigans, fine. Omega cutting the promo, but like I gotta say, I mean, Kenny Omega won the Impact World title a couple nights ago. That was just completely not there tonight.
Yeah, well, what happened, I think, because he didn't have any titles with him tonight, so I think they just kind of retconned talking about anything that happened, and he came out there with no titles so that, it didn't get out that he won those titles. Because if they would have taped the show before the pay-per-view with Kenny Omega having those titles or even talking about winning them, then that'll be kind of a spoiler. So I expect to be more on that front maybe next week. But it was very jarring because this is 3 belts Kenny. I'm sure this is in some ways kind of like a fallout show from Impact Rebellion. Like the big story this weekend is that Kenny Omega has these 2 championships now, and in terms of Impact and AEW. I know he's got the AAA title too, but you didn't see or hear about any of that on this show, and it was very jarring.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to disagree with you on that explanation. 2 reasons. One, even when they've had these closed set shows where they have a lot of extras and independent wrestlers that are just there to work dark and elevation, spoilers have been pretty well kept under wraps.
Right.
Probably because these guys and girls, like, they don't want to get caught being the one that stooged off an outcome, when they're trying to get a job. But more importantly, a lot of these promos were taped, and they could have been taped at any point. And some of them screamed at me, okay, they taped this after the fact, knowing, hey, we have time to insert this. They could have taped this after Omega had his match against Swan. Or again, it was done in a limo. It wasn't like it was out in the open with a bunch of crowd participation. So this whole thing, the theme of it of like, and where's a spoiler? Did anybody think Rich Swann was winning? So, I mean, where's even the spoiler alert? I don't know.
No, yeah, there's absolutely a way around this. I mean, that's the only reason I could explain that, but, it isn't about enough excuse maybe, but it was just very weird seeing Kenny Omega, who's supposed to be 3 belts Kenny, with nothing, no gold to speak of.
Nothing. So we'll see more of Kenny and company in a little bit. We do get the Young Bucks up next in the next match. Young Bucks versus the Sydal brothers. So I gotta bring this one up. And this match, first off, this match is again, it's a Young Bucks match. There's some crazy counters and spots that I'll try to note on some of them. So that's that. There was a glaring, like, and again, this being a tape show, can we find a way to go back and cover this? There's a point to where Matt rolls Nick Jackson out, and they basically try to do like the Bella Twins twin magic of Nick's hurt, Matt's gonna roll Nick out, and then so that way Matt can pop up and play possum. So they do it, and then the ref sells it that he has caught on. Commentary is like, oh yeah, ref realizes that these guys aren't twins, they're brothers, but we can tell the difference. So like we've uncovered the aha, but then the ref never makes Matt leave, and then commentary is kind of like, like, did you catch this?
They're trying to cover for the ref, it looked like, but the ref didn't make any type of action. I thought that was so weird. It's even weirder because they don't look like identical twins, so obviously you would think that this would get caught, but you do notice that if the referee doesn't do anything about it, this guy looked like a complete moron. So I don't know what was happening, because commentary at one point, Excalibur kind of pretended like he was confused, saying, well, which one is that? And it was kind of a mess. I didn't like that they did that segment like right in the middle of the match. But I will say I like the Young Bucks as heels in this match. I mean, they're just incredible heels.
Yeah, it was I just it just, as the match was flowing and flying and fast, and it just halted the match for me for a minute. So I'm like, wait, what has happened? And then I mean they pick back up and then move on. So it's not like that's got to define the match. There's they get ready, the Bucks get ready to do like I think that's it's the Meltzer driver, when then the one has them in like the tombstone position, but then a crazy counter to that you got to check out and see. There's a spot where I believe Matt Sydal is getting ready to do like a Hurricane Rana off the top rope to one of the Bucks, and one of the Bucks escapes out of it, and just Matt Sydal just falls, hits an ass bump on the top ropes, and just goes, just flying. Looked brutal as hell. So some crazy spots in there. Ultimately, the Young Bucks get the win, as you'd expect. And then, of course, post-match, we see Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, they come out talking about how they used to be friends with the Bucks, how last time that they spoke, they said the next time, Kazarian and Daniels said next time they lose, they will no longer be a tag team. And they basically said, we're number one. We want to call out the Young Bucks, and you no longer are friends. You guys are just a bunch of entitled, overdressed bitches.
I love this promo. I mean, I thought this was maybe, this is a show filled with good promos, but this was right there at the top. As Chris Daniels and Kazarian have this great storyline where if they lose, then they have to retire, essentially kind of like Ric Flair, but they haven't been doing much of that on TV. They've been doing a lot of their winning on Dark and Dark Elevation, which is fine. But now that they've stepped up and challenged the Young Bucks, I hope they don't just automatically get that shot and they kind of embargo those matches. I hope that they keep having to wrestle matches on TV. And if they lose those matches, they have to retire. But if they win, then they're still on path to face the Young Bucks because they haven't done enough with this storyline. And if this is going to lead to the retirement of, Chris Daniels has been doing this forever, I think he deserves better. And it would be a better TV product if they told that story leading up to facing his best friends in the Young Bucks.
Absolutely. We get to a pre-tape promo of Jade Cargill. And she's talking about how, look, all these managers, they want to be in the Jade Cargill business. They want it. But the problem is, Alfred, managers, you're a Forbes.com writer. You know the cut managers. They want that cut. They want that percentage off the top. And she said, no. That's not happening. Like that, I don't need that. I'm the money. I'm the one who creates the money. And her tagline she signs off with, I'm Jade Cargill. I'm that bitch.
Yeah, I really love these. It's like in the vein of those Macho Man, kind of how Macho Man and Elizabeth came together, where all the managers wanted Macho Man, and then out comes Liz, and she just kind of floats on the cloud to Macho Man. And this is not only putting over Jade Cargill, whoever she ends up agreeing with, because it's not necessarily going to be a manager, maybe a partner. Whoever she ends up partnering with, it's going to really put them over because it's putting them above being just a manager. Like Jade Cargill, week after week, is making it clear she doesn't just want some manager; she wants somebody special. So I think whoever they end up selecting, it would be a very fun pairing.
Yeah, I mean, this free agent thing, this hottest free agent, commentary's putting it over. You're right. Eventually, if they find somebody that they are going to put with her, it makes them seem that much more important that they were able to win out in this search for Jade Cargill and who she could let in. So Jade Cargill, I mean, she's trying to lock her network up. She's trying to stay private, much like what our sponsor of tonight's show can do for you. Because we're welcoming a new sponsor of the show, IP Vanish. IP Vanish. That's IP Vanish is a virtual private network, so VPN for short. And VPN is a super important tool. If you use the internet, this message is for you. Super important tool that helps you safely browse the internet. That's right. There's all kinds of craziness out there these days, Alfred. I mean, you can't never be too careful. And with a VPN like IP Vanish, a VPN on your computer, your tablet, your phone, even things like your Fire Stick when you're streaming media. That VPN, all your data is encrypted. It's very important. So what you're reading, what you're searching, what you're watching, whatever it is you're doing, you want to keep it to yourself, right? You don't want it out there in the world for the craziness. So it's important on the internet. No one else should be into your business. And IP Vanish is going to help you remain anonymous and secure when you're doing your browsing. And so for those of you who are tuning into the show, which we always appreciate, IP Vanish is offering an incredible 65% off. That's right, 65% off. So that's just $3.49 for the first month. Or if you just want to go all in for a year, $31.49. I mean, come on. We've seen how generous some of you guys are on the super chats. Just imagine putting just a few of those bucks towards that with this deal. I mean, you be set up for a whole year here. IPVanish.com/INC. INC is your promo code. And everything you get with the IP Vanish, you're going to get an anonymous IP addresses. This means your personal IP address cannot be tracked by anyone on the web. You circumvent any online censorship. IP Vanish has more than 1,500 servers, 70 plus locations. Get protection when using public Wi-Fi. So if you're out there at a coffee shop or what have you, remember IP Vanish. All your data is encrypted so no one can snoop on what you're doing. 24/7 support. Email them. Chat with them. Even call them. The old-fashioned pick up the telephone and dial the digits. They're there to help. Again, IPVanish.com/INC. 65% savings. $349 a month, $31.49 a year. This is the time to sign up with our discount and their current promotional offerings. It's not going to go forever, so make sure you jump into it while you can. IP Vanish is the best of the best, even rated 4.7 out of 5 on Trustpilot, and that's with more than 6,000 reviews. Show these guys some love. They're now here with us on Wrestling Inc. to help and make this podcast possible. IPVanish.com/INC.
Dude, that's a great deal. I mean, for those of you, and there's a lot of people who do use IP blockers. I'm one of them. I mean, that is one of the best deals I've ever seen. I'm very interested in taking advantage of that.
Well, and there's there's that line in there about circumvent censorship. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you live in a certain part of the world and maybe something's not available here, networks, whatever. I mean, VPNs can do some magic for you to
free the whole world for you.
Free the whole world. So just put it out there. All right, back to Dynamite. Penta L0 Miro. Penta L. Let's try this again. Penta LZ versus Orange Cassidy. He's changed his name so many times, and I love it. But the evolution of the name always throws me up on which one I'm watching.
I miss Pentagon. It was just a Pentagon Junior, and then they're always screwing with it.
He's up against Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy's out there, and this I actually appreciated the comedy that we got out of this. You don't always get to see comedy with Penta in this situation, but you have Orange Cassidy's out there, and he keeps wanting to do his hands in the pockets, and Penta's not allowing it. We're going back and forth. Orange Cassidy gives him the little shin kicks. So fun opening sequence here. Obviously, Penta's then going to eventually take control, as you'd expect. But there's a couple cool points. One here is Orange Cassidy. He gets Penta to the outside. Cassidy goes to do a suicide dive through the ropes, and Penta counters that into like a guerrilla military press. And then at one point, with one hand, Alfred is holding Cassidy up. I mean, just an incredible display of strength. Just really, really cool spot to watch here. We do see Orange Cassidy. He reverses the package pile driver. We get a big false finish there. Alex interrupts, getting ready to talk more about Trent's mom. He gets tossed in the ring. Ref's distracted, trying to get him out of the ring. And Orange Cassidy ends up getting the microphone from Trent, gets to use it just as Penta did the week prior. So Orange Cassidy gets the win in this match. So this one also a very big upset and surprise in how they booked this.
Yeah. And that spot you were talking about where he caught him in midair with that gorilla press, I guess Excalibur said, have you ever seen anything like that in your life? And I don't think I have. Have you?
No.
I thought that was incredible. That was really, they should have really saved that for like a pay-per-view spot, but you never know. You can never plan that kind of stuff, especially in AEW where there are fewer. So I just love that spot. I love this match from beginning to end. I thought Penta is so funny in terms of comedy without making himself look like a clown. He was like being very angry and worked up, but it was very comedic in that Orange Cassidy, one of the stories of this match was Orange Cassidy trying to put his hand in his pocket. So like he'd be in a submission, he'd try to put it in there. I thought these two worked incredibly together. I want to see another match between them, but by the time this match ended, I had a big old smile on my face, and it was a really good match. I liked it.
So Penta, I believe, came out of the babyface tunnel.
Yes, I believe you did.
And I mean, which is odd because they cut to they did show a quick pre-tape promo that they cut backstage, and then again Penta tried to use some shenanigans to cheat. So like I was interested, like he came out of the babyface tunnel, he was kind of embracing in some of the comedy. So I'm curious to see like where on the side of the fence is this character at right now.
Right. I mean, Penta's definitely the way he acts. He's a heel. I mean, and this big feud was with Cody. That's another thing they just kind of dropped without doing a huge match is that the Penta Cody feud seems to have stopped. But, based on how Alex Abrahantes has been acting, Penta certainly seems like a heel. And he has this obnoxious manager who's taking all these cheap shots, constantly interfering. But, maybe that's an oversight on AEW's end. Yeah,
you're right. 1 week, Penta's, they're pulling out personal shots to Cody of like talking about Cody's unborn child, and now we're just totally pivoted away from that. They've opted for Cody and QT Marshall instead. We'll get a Britt Baker promo, Dr. Britt Baker with Tony Schiavone and Rebel backstage, and she's done it. She did what she said. She is number one in the rankings now to challenge Sheeta, and she gave a little her besides her DMD, she gave a little Sheeta later.
Yeah, I saw that. I really do like the DMD. I think that's going to be one of the things that really gets over when they have crowds back, is people doing the DMD with her. I like that she's kind of training people to do that. And it's just weird that this heel makes perfect sense. She has this point and she gets to where she was going to go. It's kind of like a credible heel, but it's very odd to see a heel kind of check all those boxes. And I think when it comes to her versus Sheeta, she's going to win, to be honest. So they're really kind of making Britt Baker this very, very credible heel. She was talking about how she should be number one and really putting the emphasis on the rankings. And she's only done better in the rankings since then. And now she's talking about how she draws money and does all that stuff, which, she is one of the bigger stars that they have. So, everything she said so far has been true. I don't see any reason why I should boo this woman.
No, there was a ton of little things, making Schiavone have his finger up.
Yes.
And I don't know if you Rebels walking on that one crutch. The crutch has got like Christmas lights. It's blinged out. It's just a lot of things here that are just on fire. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I've said it before, and I agree with you. Whenever they decide to have the match of Britt versus Shida, I think it's inevitable. Britt's going to win. But I do think like this is some of what you can try to control. Not having really a lot of fans is you can control the sound, the narrative. You don't need to do the whole let's make Britt the lovable babyface again. You can do that at any time many years later, and you'll get miles out of her being the accomplished, educated, pretty girl next door. But I mean, she's just so money as a heel. You gotta find a way to make sure that when that match does happen and she does beat Shida, that she just does some dastardly things to win.
She cannot win this clean. It just for a number of reasons. One of them being that she just had that belt forever and defended it with honor, and like Britt winning it, underhandedly would just be so great for her to kind of regress as a heel and get people to keep booing her.
For sure. So up next, we get kind of what's going to cap off hour number one. It is the biggest piece of business to sell here on this Go Home show, again, to this Blood and Guts premium episode that's coming next week. It is the parlay. It is the Pinnacle, not the Pineapple, the Pinnacle and Inner Circle, who are going to be face-to-face. Try to show some decorum, Tony Schiavone asked. Should be noted first, though, each team has their own personal security that comes out. First, here comes Pinnacle, just your typical, dressed in black security. They stand and secure the stage. To be a little upstaged and outdone by the Inner Circle's security, like the Hells Angels or whatever, coming out on bikes. So pretty cool visual there. And so we get the two teams. All so much good out of this. So this is something we'll probably give a lot of the time here to this podcast to, because it really is one of the highlights. Visually, Alfred, the way they shot this, they have both teams standing in line, everybody paired off against their respective primary adversary. Wardlow with Hager, FTR to Santana Ortiz, Spears to Sammy, MJF, of course, to Jericho, Schiavone right there in the middle. And this was great because everybody, other than Wardlow and Hager, everybody got into the talking. Everybody sold their angle, their perspective to this. And we'll just start there. I mean, that's not something that goes against the traditional grain of how we see anymore these kind of these big sells happen. Normally it's one or two people just do all the talking, but here everybody got their share.
Absolutely. And when you're building a team match like that, that's exactly what should happen. I like that they called this a parlay. It's a new word for me. I was not familiar with the process of a parlay. And so that they used that word and kind of introduced this to pro wrestling and had specific rules was really cool. One of the things I liked about this format is that even though they were both on those kind of different sides and they're tense and they're facing each other, both teams seemed to adhere to the rules of the parlay, where when somebody would get really heated and try to cross that line and start fighting, everybody else would jump in like, no, you can't do that. So it really kind of, I thought, added value to this segment, that they were just going to be talking, that it was getting heated, but it wasn't going to cross a certain line. I thought that was very well done. And you're right. Like visually, it just looked really cool in terms of seeing these two rows of talent. It's definitely a departure from what you're used to seeing on pro wrestling. So I like that they added something different. Yeah,
it was like there was an unspoken rule that if one of you if somebody touches them, like we automatically forfeit or something.
Yeah.
It was nice. And again, it's gotten formulaic in WWE. This is a contract signing. This is the whatever. And so that, nice to put just a different name to what this was. And Tony Schiavone starts out, he does clarify, and you can kind of, figure as much if you look at the graphic that they kept using, as they would show two rings surrounded in a cage. So again, a war games essentially, where you're gonna have two rings, an opening 5-minute period, and then after that, every 2 minutes or something like that, one member from a team's going to get to come in. So they initially start with, some team's gonna have a one-man advantage throughout this, and Sean Spears takes the mic first, which I didn't see that coming. And Sean Spears says that we should have the advantage because we were lured into this match by the Inner Circle. Sammy Guevara, he responds to Spears, basically says, look, dude, you've been a failure since you've been in AEW. You were a failure at that place you used to work at. And you know what? Go ahead. Go. You can have the advantage. And Guevara standing up there saying, I'll enter first even on our team. And I don't care if it's 4-on-1. I'm taking it on, and I'm going to take you guys on. So Sammy Guevara looking strong there. FTR then takes the mic for Pinnacle. They get personal, citing Santana Ortiz's kids, citing their ages and their genders, saying you better hug them next Tuesday. A message from Uncle Dax. I mean, like just really getting personal. And this is like what you said, Alfred. At this point, everybody having to start hold each other back because you can feel the animosity building. And he gets capped off by, as it should, with MJF and Jericho. MJF saying, "Thank you, Chris Jericho, because if not for you, we don't have an AEW. That is a reality." He says, you know, the pressure you must feel, you know, the bags under your eyes, the bloodshot eyes. If you don't come out here and hit a home run, you know, you're affecting the lives of these guys and girls and the food being put on the table. And it's time for me to overtake and have that spot. I want that spot, and I'm going to take that spot. Heavy is, you know, the head that wears the crown. I'm going to take that crown. And Jericho ends it with, you don't just get to take that spot. You got to earn that spot, and I'm going to kill you. You're going to have to kill us come blood and guts. So, I mean, just sound bites galore, Alfred, in this promo.
Excellent. I mean, they're not going to have to do much to make this into a vignette package for their Road 2 series or whatnot, but this was so excellent. I mean, I thought everybody was great in this segment who cut a promo, and even Wardlow and Hager, who didn't cut a promo, but they were doing what they've been doing this whole time. They were just staring at each other, which if you watch, I don't think they stopped staring at each other for 1 second. So when they were both in the inner circle, that was their thing. Now they're on the opposite side staring at each other, which I absolutely loved. And I thought everybody, I mean, not even grading on a curve. Every time I heard somebody cut a promo, it just kept raising and raising and raising until they got to Jericho and MJF, and they both capped it off perfectly. I like the fact that, I mean, I kind of would have wanted to see this live because then you're kind of more in the moment, but I like the fact that they were able to then take that and put it and present it perfectly in terms of how to tell the story. I think that really helped. But, I mean, this was a home run all the way around. If there's pressure for Jericho to hit another home run, I think he did it here.
Yeah, and especially coming off of last week when we saw the pre-tape of the Pinnacle, which we talked about, which was pretty good, and Wardlow and MJF did the speaking, and then we saw Inner Circle live in the ring, and I think you and I both agreed it wasn't their best showing. So this was a huge rebound, especially for Jericho in the Inner Circle. But overall, you know, you don't want this segment to flop. This is what you're centering this big show around next week, and you know, from what we can gather, Alfred, this match is going to be probably an hour's worth. It's probably going to be half the show. Oh, yeah. Now they start announcing some other matches as we're going to get to here in a little bit. They start having some other segments where they announce matches for next week, which was confusing. I have to think the Blood and Guts match absolutely is going to be live in front of whatever crowd they have next week. And I mean, they're pumping hard. They're selling tickets. So they're selling tickets to this. I got to just think these other matches maybe are pre-taped because a cage, and we're in Daly's place. That's a whole logistic in and of itself of either lowering a cage or even erecting the cage. You know, your live TV, you can't spend 20 minutes having this cage be put together. You know, so I mean, I got to think that there's going to be some kind of a mix of live and pre-tape next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's what it is. And they're going to be live there in the arena, and maybe they're going to even have the cage there. So they'll be outside the cage live, and then maybe they'll throw to the matches that they had earlier tonight, and those are going to be some of the matches there. Because, I mean, they really did hype this up as kind of a one-match show, and that Blood and Guts is going to be the thing that's going to be happening on that night. So I can only imagine that they're going to maybe have the Blood and Guts spectacle there, but these matches that they're advertising are going to be stuff that they've already done. Yeah,
I mean, and we'll note some of them. At least some of the other matches they are promoting are all kind of blood feuds, kind of some payoffs that need to happen. You know, obviously by the time we get here next week, we'll be recapping. We'll be looking at what just happened. So let's, I guess, a little prediction here. If you got to put some money down, who's walking out on top between the Pinnacle and MJF? Who's last standing?
I think it almost has to be the Pinnacle. I think just the story that they're telling, and this is a company in AEW that brought in guys like Chris Jericho for this very moment. MJF is a guy who he's ready. He's not the future of anything. As young as he is, he's been doing this for long enough and become his biggest star where he's ready to take the quote-unquote spot of Chris Jericho. I mean, it's kind of imaginary that Chris Jericho would lose that spot. You know, he's Chris Jericho. He'll be fine. But in terms of the story they're telling of MJF being a mark for your spot, and I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to have to beat you in order to get there, this new group, and which, you know, it sounds like they have long-term plans for the Pinnacle. I just think MJF has to be the last person with his hands raised.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Pinnacle definitely, and MJF or some combination of, you know, you can make a case for literally anybody in the Pinnacle of like MJF could stand tall. You want Wardlow to be standing tall. Yeah. You're even kind of noting it in the promo here tonight that Shawn Spears needs to get going. So yeah, it's really. But I don't see them just, you know, they're not just going to run through and squash So I'm and then it's like you're building to this, and again this feud between centered around Jericho and MJF that's been going on for so long, and it's had good twists and turns up to this point. You got to believe they booked. Okay, they've already booked in their minds the big, the big showdown that it is going to be this match, and there's got to be some that swerve that's coming there,
right?
Whether it's an addition, whether it's a betrayal, whatever it is. So I mean, I agree. Pinnacle's got to stand tall. They're going to win, but how they get to it, this is one of the more intrigued angles I can recall in wrestling.
Yeah, and it should be exactly as you said, a blood war, like a blood feud, in that there should be a lot of juice. It should be hotly contested. It definitely shouldn't be one-sided. And I expect it to be really physical, and expect to see some pretty crazy stuff next week.
Absolutely. So that's going to be next week. So we hope you come back and join us next Wednesday night. We're going to have a lot to talk about off of Blood and Guts. But picking back up here, we go into hour number 2 for AEW Dynamite. Nakazawa he's in the ring still with laptop and headset. Eddie Kingston comes out, and then Kingston's just like, no, get this jabroni out of here. I want Omega. Omega quickly surfaces in suit and all with Callis on the stage. And, Omega's like, yeah, I don't just get to come in there. That's not how this is going to work. And then Nakazawa attacks Kingston with a laptop. So we get that. But then Kingston quickly overcomes that. Now he's getting ready to break Michael's ankle with the chair. Moxley shows up. Moxley hits the ring. He's helping this. He's got a rear naked choke. He's attacking Kenny Omega. Got a rear naked choke on Kenny Omega. At this point now, they're threatening to break Omega's ankle. Don Callis is pleading with them. Kingston and Moxley just want a match. They want a tag match. And finally, Callis gives in and says that'll happen. And this is the first hint that we actually get of more happening next week on Blood and Guts, because they say this tag match is going to happen next week. So, again, a Blood and Guts kind of feud that we're going to get some level of a payoff here. What do you think of this segment here and how Kenny Omega, Kingston, and Moxley all look?
I thought it was fine. It's just, where did they make any excuses as to why the Elite wasn't there to help Kenny Omega in that situation? Because that's a situation that's just begging for the guy's allies to come in. He had 2 allies who weren't even part of his real stable there, and nobody else ended up coming out. I thought that was very weird that we had just seen them less than an hour ago cutting a promo and chumming it up in the limo. So there's no reason to believe that they wouldn't be there. So, I mean, that's one of those oversights that it does sound like a nitpick, but I don't consider that a nitpick at all, that this guy is pretty much defined by these guys that he walks around with, and somehow he's able to get tripped up and be there by himself. So that was kind of weird to me. But, I did like Michael Nakazawa, not only in the segment, but this whole show. I thought he was very funny. I think he's a very good addition to that group in terms of their kind of lackey who is the fall guy for a lot of stuff. And I like Kenny Omega as a heel, pretty much like throwing him to the wolves, saying, "Oh well, that's what he's here for. Go ahead and break his ankle. See if I care."
Yeah, no, good point. I did kind of I didn't give that credit. Well, and maybe answer your question, because you're right. Like, where's the rest of the guys? Where's the Good Brothers? We saw the Bucks in a match earlier. Where are they? The only thing I can figure is that they said, like Omega said, we got more than one lackey, and he starts calling for Cutler, and then we see Cutler gets thrown out of the tunnel, and it's by Moxley. So maybe the subtlety is supposed to be that Moxley's already like barricaded the rest of them off somewhere. I don't know, but you're right. We just saw them in the limo. Right after that limo segment, we see a Bucks match. So yeah, again, more of what I said off the top of the show. This show very much felt like it was glued together by a lot of segments, and it's hard to tell what was shot when, what was the script at what day, and how they piece some things together. Because it's not a nitpick. It's a notable gap in the story. But that's going to be one of the matches we see next week. Up next, we get some women's action. Penelope Ford, of course, with Kip Sabian in her corner, up against Chris Statlander, who she has Orange Cassidy. Basically, Statlander is going to get the win here in an inverted pile driver. Not much more to say here other than Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander, am I just catching this new entrance music?
Yeah, she had the Orange Cassidy's music, Pixie's music.
Okay.
Something My Mind. Where's My Mind? I believe it's called.
Yeah.
So she's just using the same that Orange Cassidy. I guess they're figuring they have to get their money's worth because AEW bought that theme music, so they have the rights to it. So they're just, I guess anybody in the Best Friends gets that theme music now.
If you're paying if Khan's paying the royalties, get the spins out of it. I remember her coming out. I was hearing that. I was like, that's different. That's not her normal music.
Yeah.
All right, so then we got kind of a Nightmare Factory versus we have QT Marshall in the factory up against the Nightmare, team of Dustin and Lee Johnson and Billy Gunn. But QT Marshall and then they show up in Cody's bus. So that's kind of something to note because that's going to book in on the segment here. So they show up in the bus. So we got the battle here of Cody's loyal family versus his those who have betrayed him and have gone against him. And it's noted on commentary by Tony Schiavone here. Nick Camarado, one of the guys, part of QT Marshall's factory. Obviously, again, just big guys, got the look. And Schiavone notes this guy's got a cross of a Bruiser Brody, Billy Jack Haynes look. I thought that was a very, a cool comment to put him over. So he's looking strong, beating up on Billy Gunn. Lee Johnson, he's shining on the babyface side of things with his offense and his maneuvers. Anthony Ogogo, again, he's getting over. He's not part of the match. He's there on outside interference. He gets his solid gut punch, and that's ultimately what's going to lead to QT Marshall getting the pin. So QT Marshall and company, they get the win. Here comes Austin and Colton Gunn, Billy's sons. They start attacking QT after the match. This causes QT to run off. He starts to run and try to leave on the bus, but Cody comes out of the bus, beats him up. Now all of a sudden, they're battling outside the bus. We got other wrestlers and fans cheering it on like it's a backlot brawl. And Cody and QT find themselves on top of the bus, figure 4 leg lock. It's all kinds of craziness. And we find out we're going to get Cody versus QT next week at Blood and Guts. So again, another match that's got this kind of personal feel to a personal feud that we're going to get some kind of payoff here. Are you bought into QT Marshall? Is he a viable threat that's under Cody's skin?
He's not a viable threat. I mean, it hasn't been long enough, but I am into this heel turn and the stable. I mean, I think Nick Camarado is such an impressive looking guy. I just felt like this whole thing was like 3 weeks of television booked in one segment. I think them, quote unquote, stealing that bus, having this match against the Nightmare family, and then ultimately having a match against Cody should have been 3 things that happened in 3 different weeks. And I would have actually liked to see a match where it's Cody versus QT Marshall on that bus. I mean, they had Aubrey jump up on the bus, so they kind of made it seem like there was going to be a match there, and it just kind of put in your mind like, yeah, this should probably be where they go with this, like ultimately, not now. I thought it was way too much to be giving it away for us to be excited then next week. I think it was just too much overload for this segment, honestly.
So I have a theory. Hear me out. Jim Ross has said it a few weeks. I guess I said he said a few weeks ago. It sounded like he was under the impression or the instruction that Blood and Guts would be one match. So I have a theory that maybe a few weeks ago, the plan was we're going to let this Pinnacle Inner Circle thing be the entire program. Maybe it wasn't going to be under a cage confined that way, or maybe it was going to start that way and they find their way out of the cage and they fight amongst Daly's place, they fight amongst the Jaguar Stadium. I have a theory if somewhere along that way the decision was made of like, this just isn't going to be enough to hold the 2 hours. We're putting too much pressure to have these guys hold 2 hours with commercials in between that are going to happen. And so I almost wonder, did they then call the audible somewhere in the last week or two? We're going to make this an hour's worth. This is going to be one half of it, but we then need to we need to fill matches otherwise. Sure. And they shot this tonight the way we saw it with QT and Cody. Like you said, 3 weeks worth of stuff that just got compiled into one segment. Or again, where was the rest of the Elite? And we decided that we're going to make this tag match for Omega. And
right,
a lot of this feels like, again, it was pieced together, and that there was an audible call that this Blood and Guts match of the two factions just can't sustain 2 hours, or it's not a good ratings move in terms of the segment to segment.
Right. Now that's a good call. I can see that being exactly what happened, because it did definitely seem like that. Like they were all just kind of glued together in terms of them having to present this on a taped show.
We saw Miro attack Kip Sabian backstage and slams Kip's hand in the door. This is the Miro I was here for. This is what I came to see.
Absolutely. He did everything right. It was brutal. I think Kip was great selling this, like, and the slamming of the door and selling it like his arm was broken. I loved everything about this.
Yeah, this is the Miro. This is it. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if we'll see him next week or when it's going to be next, but this is the Rusev crush we all wanted when he leaves leaves New York and goes through the forbidden door and the creative freedom that is supposedly AEW.
Yeah, and you kind of had to have something like this, because the story is he's been looking for Kip Sabian. Well, Kip Sabian showed up, so if he would have shown up on TV and then left, and then next week Rusev is like, "Oh, where's Kip Sabian?" It's like, "He was just there, man. Like, where were you last week?"
I was busy playing my video game. He was here. All right. So main event time. Once again, the TNT title main eventing Dynamite, and Preston Vance, aka 10 from the Dark Order, really getting put over here. I mean, he's, I think, 13-1 is what they said in 2021. So got a strong record. Really putting over that he was handpicked by Mr. Brody Lee. Really playing to that emotional heartstring. So, a babyface 10 in Dark Order up against a babyface Darby Allen. That's kind of been Darby's gimmick here. Trying to be a fighting champion up against others who deserve it and are doing it the right way. Darby, of course, flanked by Sting. 10 flanked by much of the Dark Order. Again, 10's just getting put over on commentary strong. He's looking strong for the start of the match. Darby eventually then takes over some. He's working on 10's left hand. That's going to come into play. At some point, though, Darby dives onto 10 and other Dark Order members on the outside. At this point, his ref's distracted, trying to get everybody cleared out of the way. Ethan Page appears. He slams Darby's head into the ring post. It looks like 10 might have this in hand. He's taking advantage of a beaten down Darby, gets the full Nelson locked on, and I don't know if it was paying tribute to Roddy Piper, since that was the biography this past week on AEW, but they do the Piper Bret Hart WrestleMania 8 finish, full Nelson. Well, for Piper, a sleeper hold. For 10, it's full Nelson, but Darby kicks up on the turnbuckle, pulls back. 10's shoulders are what's on the mat. 1, 2, 3. So a 3-count victory for Darby to retain. It's only a matter of leverage and weight. 10 is, he's not knocked out. He's right there. He's attentive. Show of sportsmanship. But then here comes Page and Scorpio Sky again. They attack Sting and Darby, putting them in submission holds. Lance Archer ultimately coming out to help run them off. So continuing it 2 weeks in a row here, Alfred, of Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky in the main event segment as the top villains that we end the show with. So plans certainly in the works here for Ethan Page, who's one of the newest acquisitions to the company.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see them get involved like this, but not in the capacity of them just having to keep interrupting. And it's almost like AEW couldn't leave well enough alone. I think that would have been the perfect ending, to just kind of put over 10 after a losing effort, but in a match where they really did put him over on commentary. I mean, I'd have been just fine with them going off the air like that. But then by the time they went off the air, it just was kind of ridiculous in that they had to fit in all this stuff that just happened. And then Darby Allen's here selling. They're like, oh man, I hope Darby's okay. Well, coming up next is this. And it's like, well, if you guys would have just let the other moment breathe, that would have been much better. I'm still not quite clear as to why Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, what exactly it is they want. I mean, I know they did cut a promo about it. And I do like that they're doing something with these guys, because I think they're both talented and I look forward to seeing what they do. But I just thought it was a little excessive to just have more outside interference to end the show.
I mean, that's the theme, and I guess again, you have to understand. I guess you just have to accept what's the flavor of vodka you're indulging in here when you watch Dynamite. Like it's clear they never want to be critiqued by people like us of maybe what we would critique at certain times in WWE segments of like wanting more or being repetitive. Right. I mean, when you think, oh, that might be enough. Well, no, we got to throw one more thing out there. I mean, literally every segment. There was not one segment that does not either have something blatant happening in front of or not in front of the ref, or then post-match shenanigans. They never let something just happen and then move on. I mean, they for better or worse, they will throw a little bit extra every time on top of the pie. So, one thing I want to know about 10, Preston Vance. This guy, and it was funny, I know I said something about this on Twitter, and then a couple minutes later, Darby, in a defense mode, starts to rip his mask. But this guy, he's built well. You can see that. And if you follow social media, you can see him without his mask. He's got TV star movie good looks, right? He's a good looking dude. He's built well. He's not the traditional guy you put under a mask. He's not Mick Foley with half of an ear you're putting under a mask or whatever. He's not a guy who was burned in flames you're putting under a mask. I got to think this guy's getting over naturally just by, the Dark Order's gotten over naturally as baby faces, and 10's getting over as, again, fulfilling the work of Mr. Brody Lee, essentially. They got to get this mask off him eventually. If this guy's going to continue to rise as a top babyface, this is not a guy whose face you want hidden. This is a guy who you want to market and put out there. So I thought it was funny. I tweeted that, thought it was a matter of time you take the mask off of him, and then and not much later, Darby was ripping it off. I was like, yes, Here we go.
The referee's smart enough. He's like, hey, man, LaBar just tweeted about the mask. It's got to go. And he just jumped on there and did it. I'm going to actually disagree with you there. I actually haven't seen 10. I'm sure sometime in the future, yes, definitely, especially if they plan on doing big things with 10 Preston Vance. I think that'd be great. But I think there's some mileage to be had with the look that he has. Just being this really yoked, like buff guy and having that mask on, he kind of looks like a superhero or a super villain, whatever side he would be on. It's almost like a larger than life thing. And I think that just gives him that edge that I think a lot of younger viewers, a lot of kids would get into something like that. I know if I was a kid watching something like that, I was always into Sting and the Warrior and people with masks and face paint and stuff like that. And I think that would be along those lines in terms of young viewers getting into it.
I mean, I guess I'll give you that response of like the superhero thing. And God, for as long as -1 is around and he's got the mask emulating 10, I guess you got to keep 10 with a mask there. But, I mean, I guess I can get it. But I guess I'm thinking the WWE mindset of like the talk shows and the marketability of like, we need to see the guy's face. We need to see the money. We need to see the expressions. But all this in the context of 10 just strikes me as a guy. He's getting over so naturally. And so it seems like, what was once a unassuming assassin that was given a number for a name, he's kind of broke out of that and is, I mean, once upon a time, Evil Uno looked like he was the leading figure in the Dark Order, and I don't know even know if he was there tonight, actually.
Yeah, he's really kind of taking a step back. And I mean, to your point, that promo was excellent that he cut about Brody Lee. It was just very real. He's great in terms of talking. So it was kind of weird now that I think about it, to see this guy in a mask and he's just being so open and kind of connecting and warm and inviting, but he's got this mask on. And in a capacity like that, I don't know if he should have a mask.
Yeah, so we still wait to see. We've seen Alex Silver. We've seen John Silver, Alex Reynolds. We've seen different guys, gravitate to the Dark Order popularity that's come. So it'll be interesting to see like who ultimately shines the most as they continue to push the Dark Order as baby faces. But that's how Dynamite ends. Again, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky going off as standing tall. So we'll see what comes up of it. Lance Archer is having this babyface morale turn, or morality turn, I should say. So. Feels like we're building to something, but yet to be seen what exactly it is. All right, let's go into a few news items. We'll stick with AEW and Tony Khan. So if you follow the sports world and the TV world, Alfred, NHL hockey, we knew a few weeks ago they were going to be signed. They signed a 7-year deal with ESPN, very big deal. Now it looks like they are leaving NBC completely. So NHL is going to be doing a deal with ESPN. They're also going to be doing a deal with Turner. They're going to be on TNT and TBS starting next fall for the next 7 years. And so that started begging the question of everybody of like, well, what's that do to pro wrestling? First, we were all wondering that maybe that's going to affect NXT and the USA Network if they remain with the NBC Universal platform. That's not happening. So now it turned to, well, wait a minute. NHL does like Wednesday Night Rivalry. They do these different things. What about Dynamite? But Tony Khan was on Busted Open Radio, as he's on every single week, as am I every Friday morning. Cheap plug. And Tony Khan said, we got a deal. We are on, Dynamite is on Wednesday nights for the next, I think, 2.5 years still in our deal. After that, if there's a move that makes sense, we'll think about it. But right now, it does not make sense. And again, we're on our deal. We are staying on Wednesday night. So a lot of talk of, with NXT having just moved, what if AEW chases him over to Tuesday? But that doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
Yeah, it does not seem like that's going to happen, but this is something to keep an eye out on. I know we've got a lot of time between now and the fall, and I believe Tony Khan, there's no reason why I shouldn't. They do have a deal. It's in their contract, but that doesn't mean much of anything if TNT ever decides that Wednesday nights would be the best place to put hockey. Because if you remember, when NXT moved off of Wednesday, presumably just to get out of the way of hockey in case it did come to USA Network, what they said was they've re-signed a deal. They didn't say we're moving. They said we've re-signed with USA Network, which essentially meant we just kind of changed the terms of this contract. Now we're on Tuesdays. So that same thing can happen. It's not like an ironclad contract. Maybe Tony Khan decides to do a power play if it comes to that and says, no, we're not going off Tuesday. But I really don't see that happening in terms of trying to keep partners happy and trying to work together. But listen, I have no reason to believe that they're moving off of Wednesday, but it's not something that you could just look at like this is just an ironclad thing. There's no way it happens because I think as we get closer and closer to the fall, we're going to get a better idea of what that's going to look like.
And let's not forget, there is another show that AEW continues to say that's going to come to TNT or TBS. It's not going to be a YouTube show like Dark and Elevation are. There's another show that's so then we start going, well, what night is that? Because you have Raw on Mondays, SmackDown on Friday, MLW's coming into the space on Vice. Ring of Honor, like I mean, there's the 7 days in a week, and it's a good problem to have that we have more and more wrestling companies on television in the U.S. So, yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating time to watch. As you have the worldwide leader, whether you like them or not, but still, WWE is still the leader, at least in North America, touting record revenues, record billion-dollar TV deals, all the while coming on the backside, as we think of a pandemic, more wrestling companies since the 80s on television distribution in America. This is just, it's a wild convergence right now of things happening.
It really is. And I was thinking about this actually when I was watching the UFC pay-per-view and then kind of reading about the scuttlebutt backstage at WWE of them saying that, it's only a matter of time before they get crowds. Like, we might kind of back into another boom period for wrestling, just considering the money going around for wrestling, the thirst to get out to a live event. I mean, these crowds are going to be really hot. It's going to be a couple of months where a lot of these reactions and crowds are going to be way hotter than they would be for a typical garden variety show. And I think that's going to really pique a lot of people's interest. So we might be on the precipice of, maybe not the Attitude Era. I don't want to overshoot my expectations, but at least a spike in terms of ratings, in terms of live event revenue and stuff like that. So we're going to be in for, at the very least, a mini boom period for wrestling once things open back up.
Well, what's so crazy about the boom is that there is a boom going on. Again, record TV, the mainstream media has never given more credibility via dollar bills than it is now. Again, and WWE takes that lead, but AEW, let's give them some credit for a startup company having the distribution they have is pretty crazy. Mainstream media is giving more attention to them now ever and credibility via money. There's a boom, but if you look at numbers, fewer people are watching pro wrestling than they were 20 years ago. It just so happens they're willing to consume at an insane rate, and they're willing to pay for WWE Network, or they're willing to pay for an AEW pay-per-view. They're willing to pay for the, it's like those who are left standing for pro wrestling are like, give it to me, I will pay for all of it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a wild time. It's not that every Joe Casual walking the street is wearing an Austin 316 shirt as they were in 1997. But wrestling has found a way to go as deep into the pockets as those that are still remaining interested. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much the story in terms of right before A, things shut down, but B, when they decided that they weren't going to be touring as much. The only reason they were making so much money on live tours, one of the biggest revenue drivers were those super fans who would go buy tickets to be in the front row. That was where they were making a lot of their live event revenue. So, yeah, not a lot of people have watched it in terms of consumption and ratings and what's on television. But I mean, hopefully that does change when the product is presented, because ratings have really taken a hit, particularly with WWE Raw when it comes to their pandemic shows and not having a crowd. And when they had the Thunderdome and it mimicked the crowd, that kind of helped. And I think it's really going to help television wise when they actually have people there. So hopefully they can create new fans, because Lord knows they need them.
Yeah. I mean, and there are people that do consume different. There are people, I know this for a fact, who don't sit and watch a linear 2 hours of a wrestling show, or 3 hours if it's Monday, but they follow along with the program via their social media timeline. Whatever gifts are trending is how they know who's over or who's featured. I mean, and that's not necessarily measured in the analytics that we at least talk about, on Wrestling Inc. and on Forbes and such. So it's a brave new world. And speaking of measurement, again, viewership, every week it's what we look at. NXT, that viewership by that metric down. They did 744,000 viewers on USA Network this past week. That according to Showbuzz Daily, which is down 11.5% from the 841,000 the week prior. But Alfred, it should be noted that while that's down 744,000, that's still one of the best NXT numbers since moving to the USA Network they've had. So, good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, this might be on the low end. It's very weird. These last 3 weeks of NXT ratings have just caught me completely off guard. From the first number they did when it was all the way up to 800, I think 841 or something like that. And then they went up for the second NXT, which I did not expect, but it was very encouraging. And now for them to go down as much as they did, I can only guess that last night's show had a lot of promos. There were a lot of non-wrestling segments all throughout the show, so that might have kind of turned some people out. There wasn't really a traditional like main event that they really built up. But yeah, it's very weird to see. I want to see where the kind of the bottom is, but if this is a lower end, you're right. That's very encouraging for NXT. If this is going to be on the lower end of what they do on Tuesday nights, that's a lot of growth for NXT. And when they peak for those big kind of television specials on Tuesday, I'm very interested to see what they do with those shows.
Yeah, I thought NXT, there was some fun stuff with with the Adam Cole sit down, with the Cameron Grimes, Ted DiBiase stuff, but it was a little bit of a discarded show.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so if 744,000 is what they can get for a discarded show unopposed, the next time we build to a takeover, like when we're within striking distance of a takeover, like that's huge potential of where they could get eclipsing 1 million. Nice comment here from Anthony. Honestly, LaBar and Alfred is a nice little 1-2 combo.
Oh, thank you, Anthony.
Appreciate that. So yeah, that was Dynamite tonight. Those are some headlines. There's some other stuff, of course, over on Wrestling Inc. You can take a look at Wrestling Inc. Working 24/7. You guys have no idea. Country Club Raj. He's always running the show from his smartphone in the Country Club. The news people. There are people in the Wrestling Inc. world that are just there out listening to every podcast, transcribing, listening for the little nuggets of information. Then there's Alfred and I doing the podcast circuit, making sure that the podcasts are being turning out. There's the content moderators that are watching for the content here. They're watching for your comments. I mean, it's a giant machine that Wrestling Inc. is doing 24/7, 365, all for you guys. We appreciate it. Country Club Raj from his tower. Normally it's the ivory tower. For him, it's the 18th green, I guess. Or the 19th hole, the bar.
Probably around the clubhouse. That's where it is.
But he's making it all happen. He keeps it running. So we appreciate him. We appreciate all you guys and your comments, your likes, share, tell a friend. Like if you have a friend that if you're not all like just closet wrestling fans, if you have a friend you talk to wrestling about, or a coworker, like say, hey, check out the Wrestling Inc. shows. They're on YouTube, they're on Twitch, they're on Facebook, they're on iTunes, whatever you want. Alfred, give me some plugs. What's going on Forbes.com?
Come on, Forbes.com. A lot of coverage of tonight's Dynamite. Going to have stuff on Raw and SmackDown. A couple of good interviews in May that I can't talk about yet, but I think you guys are going to like them. And then YouTube Pro Wrestling Bits.
The world of embargoed interviews, Alfred.
Yeah, tough world, man. Because I'm not good at keeping secrets. I'm telling you.
No, I saw you promote this. Give me a little bit more about this bits. You got some of these other projects you've been doing, these videos.
Yeah. It's a YouTube channel, Pro Wrestling Bits. To do a couple of them a week. It's really growing now. So just kind of commentary on the big things that are going on right now. My latest one talks about poor Adnan Virk, who I hope he gets better, but a lot of controversy with him right now. So I've had a lot of fun doing it, and really encouraged by the growth.
Adnan Virk. We need a bigger boat.
Yeah. Somebody's going to need a bigger boat. If that's all we remember him for, that's a bigger legacy than a lot of guys have in wrestling. So,
it's not as bad as Mike Adamle and Jeff Harvey.
Right. Among other things.
All right. He's at This Is Nasty, Alfred Konuwa on Forbes.com. I'm at Justin LaBar. I'll be on the Wrestling Inc. Daily tomorrow, Thursday. Every Friday morning, I'm on Busted Open Radio with Mark Henry and Dave LaGreca, 10 a.m. Eastern if you listen live, or you can listen at any time on demand on the Sirius XM app. So check that out, channel 156. Again, like, share, do what you got to do. The next post podcast will be Friday night after SmackDown. It'll be some combination of us. Tune in to find out. Appreciate it. Be safe. Be good.